Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Mystery Box Function Challenge. In the purple mystery box, there is some math, and your challenge is to figure out what it is. Today is Friday, and that means the math inside this box is particularly challenging. You can try this out by using the link in the description, and when you think you've got an idea, come on back and see if we get the same thing. Okay, let's start with a 0. Oh, so right off the bat, we get an error here. 0 gives us not a number, so for some reason the function's not defined there. Usually we see not a number with trying to take the square roots of negative values, but it can pop up in other cases too. So not exactly sure. Let's try a 1. Okay, so it's defined for 1. Let's try a 2. Oh, so we got 1 as a result for both 1 and 2. Let's try a 3. Okay, we're getting 1 every time. Let's go to a 9 maybe. Huh. So far we've got a function that is 1 for every number we've tried, but 0 and not defined for 0. Let's try some negative numbers. Oh, okay. Now we're down at -1. Let's try a -2. And let's try a -5 maybe. How about a -7? Okay, so it looks like we've got two arms. In here in the first quadrant, it's always at the value 1, and here in the third quadrant, it's always at the value -1. I wonder what happens with fractional values when we get close. Does it approach the y-axis as an asymptote? Let's put in a 1/2. Oh, still 1. Let's put in a 1/10. Get really close. Still 1. How about a -1/10? And still -1 there. Okay, so let's think about what this could possibly be. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like this before. If you've seen something like this before, maybe this won't be too tough for you. But what could be undefined when the value is 0, but then constant, but two different constants for the rest of the function? Well, if it's not a square root function and we're not getting this undefined value because we're trying to take the square root of a negative value, one other thing that I know can make the computer give a not a number is when you have that weird indeterminate form of a fraction, which is 0/0. So that's a clue to me because that 0 is undefined. But how would we get 0/0? When we put in 0, that would be x/x, but x/x would just be the number 1 all the time. So how would you make it switch for negative values? You could do that if you did something like this. If you had x over the absolute value of x. So when you put in a -1, for example, -1 over the absolute value of -1, you would get a negative value. And when you put in a +1, it's just all going to be positive, and you get the positives. So that would work for all of these. I mean, you could also do that as the square root of x over x, or sorry, not square root, the absolute value of x over x. It doesn't matter as long as one of these you're switching the negative sign, then you're good. That that is a really interesting one. I think that's it. You know, this function has a name. Sometimes it's called the sine function, and I'm just going to make my prediction as f of x equals x over the absolute value of x. So this is called the sine function, but because that sounds a lot like the trigonometric sign, it's sometimes they use the Latin and they call it signum. And what it's doing is really giving you the sign of the number. So all positive numbers give you a 1, all negative numbers give you a -1. The only real piece of information you have there is the sign. So I think we're going to take a look at this. Whoops, wrong tool. There we go. Let's take a look at this. And there it is. So the square root of, or sorry, the square root, x over the absolute value of x, or absolute value of x over x. Probably some other ways you could lay this out with a piecewise function too, but this works. And let's graph it as well. And there it is, just those two lines, at one on the right side and -1 on the left side. Well, I think that's one of the weirder ones we've done here. How did that go for you? Did you have a guess about this? Let me know. Thanks, everybody.